The Roaring Twenties by Arminda Tolentino. The 1920s, commonly known as the Roaring Twenties, was a period of political, social, economic, and technological change in the United States and Europe. This era highlights the major shifts in women's roles, racial diversity, and as well as cultural norms. The Roaring Twenties approximately took place during the years of 1920 through 1929. This period was an age well known for trying to return to normalcy after the previous event of the First World War. This era was categorized as a significant time due to the shifts that occurred during the age, such as gender roles, racial diversity, political and social change. The shift in men's fashion during the 1920s was less dramatic compared to the shift in women's fashion. At the start of the 1920s, the three-piece suit was still incorporated into their daily dress as well as consistent business attire looks. Although there wasn't much change to men's dress, a characteristic in men's dress that did take a turn was the loss of formality and conservativeness that was once displayed in their sense of dress. Now it is replaced with individualism and freedom of self-expression for the youth. Later in the 20s, the men's three-piece suit started to die down and was replaced with more casual-looking outfits, such as the turtleneck jersey that was worn under coats, as well as sportswear was introduced during the 1920s as well. Short hairstyles with pomades and waxes were usually done by men during this period, and the accessories they would use would be gloves, handkerchiefs, scarves, watches, tie pins, and cufflinks. During the 1920s, women's fashion took a major turn compared to the previous era. Women of the 1920s started to develop a new sense of dress that was more relaxed and progressive. Dresses that were once constructed with corsets and long skirts have now shifted to shorter and looser fitted garments. The style that was popularized was the tomboy look, also known as la gauchon look. This style of dress was intentionally made to diminish the contouring of a woman's silhouette, as the article of clothing was simply draped over the woman's body. These garments were usually made from rayon, which was an artificial, less expensive alternative to silk, and were commonly worn by the middle class and upper class women. In this period, hairstyles such as the bob haircut were very popularized, as well as costume jewelry for accessories. In the 1920s, the change in gender roles was considerably one of the most significant events in the decades, as it paved the way for liberated women. The change in women's roles shifted the characteristics of a woman's demeanor, which influenced the fashion industry, and this is through the flapper girls of the 1920s. The flapper girls would usually follow the popular tomboy look of the decade, but would add their rebelliousness into the garment by shortening them way above their knee to show off their legs and their ankle while they performed their dances. The style of women during this period was meant to symbolize freedom from the societal roles of women from the previous decades. But apart from their so-called defiant sense of dress, they also went against stereotypical roles of women by participating in activities that were not usually done by women of the previous years, such as smoking, drinking, driving in or driving cars, making out with men in the back of cars, or performing dances in public settings. There was a division in social classes during the 1920s, which was prominent towards the status of upper, middle, and lower class. The upper class in the United States and Europe were able to afford various luxuries such as high-quality garments. Women and men of the upper class were able to have the privilege in dressing in designer clothing, ranging from American to European designers that were popular at the time. Contrast to the upper class, the middle class had similar dress attire but were simpler and more affordable due to their economic status. Middle class women still had the privilege of affording garments to stay on trend, but instead of high quality fabrics, they would use dresses made from rayon, which was an artificial and less expensive alternative to silk. Middle-class men had the same characteristics as upper-class men, but cheaper fabrics, as well as less detail to their garments. As for the lower-class individuals, they wouldn't have the financial privilege of affording high-quality fabrics, but would rather have more thick and sustainable fabrics in order for the garments to last longer periods of time. These garments for men and women were made out of fibers such as tweed or wool, which were heavy but provided warmth throughout the seasons. Two political influences that happened during the 1920s was that in 1920, the 19th Amendment was passed, which allowed women's right to vote, and this was done after a continuous amount of protests done by women throughout the years prior to the 1920s. After this event, millions of women had greater opportunities to start entering the workforce, such as participating in blue-collar and corporate jobs at the time. Another event that happened during the 1920s, in the 1929, the Great Depression started, and it caused a huge major financial drift on society due to the economic downturn that affected Europe and America. In the 1920s, the movie scene and cinema scene was the time when Hollywood cinema business started booming. Many influences in fashion were taken from the cinema from previous designers who would design clothing for the actresses in the movie. In the 1920s, the music industry was one of the most influential and recognized categories, which inspired the name the Jazz Age for this period. It created an impact on how music is made today while providing racial acceptance for people of color through the power of song. Racial division was prominent during this period for the African American community, but that was until the start of the jazz music age, which was created in New Orleans, Louisiana, and provided various genres of music in this jazz category, such as blues, ragtime, and dance music. This genre of music broke the cycle of conventionalism, as this was a time when individuals of African American descent were recognized for their talent and were able to highlight famous singers such as Duke Ellington, Ella Fitzgerald, and Louis Armstrong. Due to the impact of this predominantly minority-made music genre, it allowed for the acceptance of people of color to be given respect, as it brought people together of all ages, genders, and races. The Roaring Twenties has impacted the way social, racial, economical, and political topics are viewed today. The events of the 1920s, such as the passing of the 19th Amendment, the shifts in gender roles, and acceptance of racial differences through music, have paved the way for greater change in the following years. Fashion of the 20s has also opened up a chance for progressive change in women's and men's garments, such as paving the way for fashion designers to be more explorative in their designs that express individualism and self-expression. As of today, designers take inspiration from this decade and implement characteristics of this era into their garments, paying tribute to this historic period of fashion and change. Here are my video links, my website links, and my song link. Thank you. Have a good day.